Have you ever wondered why the smartest person you knew suddenly disappeared? No goodbye, no dramatic fight, just silence. Everyone assumed they had changed, become cold, or stopped caring. But what if the truth is far more unsettling? What if walking away wasn't a sign of weakness, but the greatest act of self-respect they had ever made? There comes a moment when a person sees through the masks, the empty conversations, and the relationships built on illusion. And once you truly see, you can never go back. If you've ever felt yourself quietly pulling away from the world, this message may explain a part of you that no one else has ever understood. Have you ever noticed how the people who think the deepest are often the ones who slowly disappear without making an announcement? One day they are present at every gathering, replying to every message, laughing at every conversation, and then, almost without anyone realizing it, they become silent. Their phone grows quiet. Their social media stops revealing pieces of their life. Invitations go unanswered. Friends begin asking where they went, while others create their own explanations. Some assume they became arrogant. Others believe they are struggling with depression, or believe they simply no longer care about anyone. Yet these explanations often miss what is happening beneath the surface. The disappearance rarely begins with a single event. It begins with hundreds of small moments that slowly reshape the way a person sees the world. They notice conversations that never go beyond the surface. They recognize how often people speak without truly listening. They realize that many relationships survive not because of genuine understanding, but because everyone silently agrees to play a role that keeps the peace. At first, they ignore these observations, convincing themselves they are simply overthinking. But the feeling never leaves. Instead, it grows stronger with every passing day. Something changes inside them that is difficult to explain to anyone else. They begin feeling strangely exhausted after spending time in places they once enjoyed. Crowded rooms that once felt exciting now leave them emotionally drained. Small talk begins to sound repetitive, almost like hearing the same story told in different voices. They smile when expected, contribute to conversations when necessary, yet inside they feel increasingly disconnected from the performance unfolding around them. The people closest to them often notice the change first. They ask, "Are you okay?" The answer is usually yes, because there is no simple way to describe what is happening. It isn't physical pain. It isn't a single emotional wound. It is the quiet realization that something no longer fits. The life they have been living begins to feel like clothing that once fit perfectly but has slowly become too tight. Every attempt to continue as before feels less natural than the day before. This growing distance is rarely motivated by anger. It is not revenge, and it is not meant to punish anyone. In fact, many intelligent people struggle with guilt because they know their absence may hurt others. They wonder whether they should keep pretending, continue showing up, or ignore the uncomfortable feeling inside. But each time, they force themselves to stay where they no longer belong. They feel as though they are abandoning a part of themselves. What looks like disappearance from the outside is often the beginning of an invisible inner shift. Before a person walks away from the world, they first begin walking away from the version of themselves that existed only to meet expectations. The silence others misunderstand is often the first sign that a profound transformation has already begun, long before anyone else is able to see it. As this quiet distance grows, something even more unsettling begins to happen. The intelligent mind starts noticing patterns that were once invisible. It is no longer focused only on what people say, but on what they avoid saying. It begins to recognize the subtle differences between genuine kindness and kindness that expects something in return. Compliments start sounding different. Promises carry hidden conditions. Even smiles can reveal emotions that words try to conceal. What once seemed like ordinary human behavior now appears as a collection of unconscious habits, fears, and hidden intentions. This new awareness does not arrive overnight. It develops slowly through years of observing people, reflecting on experiences, and learning from disappointments. Every broken promise, every contradiction, and every repeated pattern becomes another piece of a larger picture. Eventually, they realize that many people are not interacting with each other honestly. Instead, they are protecting carefully constructed versions of themselves. They wear masks to gain approval, avoid rejection, or maintain control. Most of the time, these masks are not even intentional. People wear them for so long that they forget where the mask ends and their true self begins. For someone who naturally searches for deeper meaning, this realization can be emotionally exhausting. They begin sensing tension behind polite conversations and insecurity behind confidence. They notice how easily fear disguises itself as anger, and how often pride hides deep emotional wounds. They understand that many arguments are not really about the words being spoken, but about unspoken pain that has never been faced. Suddenly, every interaction seems to contain two conversations, the one happening aloud and the one silently unfolding beneath it. Because of this, ordinary conversations become more difficult to enjoy. While others are satisfied with appearances, the intelligent observer cannot ignore what lies underneath. It becomes impossible to laugh comfortably when they sense resentment hidden behind a joke, or to trust words that do not match consistent actions. This does not mean they believe everyone is dishonest or manipulative. Rather, they become aware that many people live without fully understanding themselves, and that lack of self-awareness quietly shapes every relationship they enter. Others often misunderstand this change. They think the intelligent person has become overly critical or suspicious. In reality, they are not searching for flaws. They are simply unable to ignore what they now see. Once the mind learns to recognize deeper emotional patterns, it cannot force itself back into comfortable ignorance. The same situations that once felt harmless now reveal layers of meaning that are impossible to break. This growing awareness creates an unexpected loneliness, not because there are no people around, but because genuine authenticity becomes increasingly rare. They begin longing for conversations where nothing needs to be hidden, where vulnerability is not mistaken for weakness, and where honesty is valued more than appearances. As that longing grows stronger, they naturally spend less time chasing acceptance and more in protecting the clarity they have worked so hard to discover. As the distance from superficial relationships grows, something unexpected begins to replace the emptiness many people fear. Silence no longer feels uncomfortable. Instead, it begins to feel peaceful. The intelligent person discovers that being alone is not the same as being lonely. In fact, they realize that loneliness often surrounded them, even when they were standing in a crowded room, smiling through conversations that never reached the parts of them that truly mattered. Solitude, however, offers something those crowded spaces never could. It creates room to hear thoughts that had been buried beneath constant noise. At first, this quiet can feel unfamiliar. Without endless messages, social obligations, or the pressure to keep everyone happy, the mind is forced to face itself. There are old memories that return without warning, unanswered questions that have waited for years, and emotions that were pushed aside simply to keep moving forward. Many people avoid these moments because they are uncomfortable, but the intelligent person gradually understands that discomfort is often the doorway to deeper understanding. Instead of running from those feelings, they begin sitting with them, allowing them to reveal truths that could never be discovered through distraction. The hours spent alone slowly become a form of inner conversation. They begin asking themselves questions they had never dared to ask before. Which parts of my life truly belong to me? Which dreams are actually mine? And which were borrowed from the expectations of others? How many decisions have I made simply to gain approval, instead of finding genuine fulfillment? These questions rarely have immediate answers, but asking them changes everything. Each honest reflection removes another layer of illusion, until a clearer picture of the self begins to emerge. During this process, the need for constant validation starts to fade. The opinions of strangers lose their power. Even the approval of friends and family becomes less important than remaining honest with oneself. This is not because they stop caring about others, but because they finally recognize that a life built entirely around pleasing people eventually leaves a person disconnected from who they really are. Authenticity begins to feel more valuable than popularity, and inner peace becomes more rewarding than temporary acceptance. Many people watching from the outside misunderstand this choice. They assume the intelligent person has become antisocial, emotionally distant, or withdrawn from life itself. Yet the opposite is often true. They are becoming more alive than ever before. They are simply directing their energy inward, instead of scattering it across relationships and routines that no longer nourish them. They choose fewer conversations, but those conversations become more meaningful. They build fewer relationships, but those connections are rooted in honesty rather than convenience. In that quiet space, without applause, expectations, or endless distractions, they slowly begin meeting the person they had spent years searching for in everyone else. And for the first time, they realize that the peace they had always hoped another person would give them had been waiting within them all along. The more a person begins to understand themselves, the more their entire world starts to change. It rarely happens in a dramatic moment. There is no single morning when they wake up as someone completely different. Instead, the transformation unfolds quietly, almost unnoticed. The things that once excited them begin to lose their appeal. Conversations that once felt meaningful now seem repetitive. Places that once brought comfort no longer feel like home. It is as if their inner world has shifted, while everything around them has remained exactly the same. This change can be confusing, not only for the person experiencing it, but also for everyone around them. Friends may wonder why they no longer enjoy the same activities. Family members may ask why they have become so distant. Some people may even feel rejected, believing they have done something wrong. Yet the truth is often much simpler. The intelligent person is not rejecting people. They are responding to a deeper change within themselves that no longer allows them to live in ways that feel dishonest. As self-awareness grows, old habits begin to fall away naturally. They stop saying yes when they truly mean no. They become less willing to sacrifice their peace just to avoid disappointing someone else. They recognize how often they ignored their own needs in order to keep relationships comfortable. What once seemed like kindness now reveals itself as fear of rejection. What once looked like loyalty sometimes turns out to be emotional dependence. These realizations are not easy to accept, but once they are seen, they cannot be unseen. Because of this, some relationships begin to fade without anger or conflict. There are fewer phone calls, fewer invitations, and fewer attempts to force connections that no longer feel genuine. It is not because love has disappeared. Rather, the foundation of the relationship has changed. If a connection depended only on shared routines, convenience, or pretending to be someone else, it struggles to survive when authenticity takes its place. This can be one of the most painful stages of personal growth. Walking away from unhealthy relationships is difficult, but realizing that even familiar relationships no longer fit can be heartbreaking. There is grief in accepting that not everyone is meant to walk beside you forever. Some people belong to a chapter of your life, not the entire story. Holding on simply because of history can prevent both people from becoming who they are meant to be. At the same time, this transformation creates space for something new. Instead of surrounding themselves with many people, they begin valuing depth over numbers. One honest conversation becomes more meaningful than 100 empty exchanges. One relationship built on trust becomes more valuable than countless connections built on appearances. Their world may become smaller, but it also becomes more genuine. But from the outside, it may look as though they have lost people. In reality, they are making room for relationships that no longer require masks, constant approval, or the exhausting effort of pretending to be someone they have already left behind. By the time this journey reaches its final stage, the person who once quietly disappeared is no longer the same individual who first stepped away. The silence that others misunderstood has reshaped them in ways that cannot always be seen. They have learned that the greatest changes in life rarely happen in front of an audience. They happen in the quiet moments, when no one is watching, when difficult truths are accepted, and when a person chooses authenticity over comfort again and again. Many people spend years chasing visibility. They measure their worth by how many people notice them, approve of them, or invite them into their lives. But the intelligent person gradually realizes that being seen is not the same as being understood. A room full of applause cannot replace a peaceful mind. Hundreds of acquaintances cannot fill the emptiness created by living a life that does not reflect who you truly are. This realization changes the direction of their life completely. Instead of asking, "How can I make people like me?" they begin asking, "Am I living in a way that is true to myself?" That single question becomes more powerful than any praise or criticism they receive. It guides the choices they make, the relationships they keep, and the opportunities they accept. They no longer chase every invitation, argue to prove every point, or seek validation from people who never truly understood them in the first place. Their energy becomes something they protect, rather than something they constantly give away. Ironically, this quiet confidence often confuses others even more. People who once ignored them suddenly become curious about their absence. Those who never valued their presence begin wondering why they are no longer available. Some interpret this change as pride, while others assume they have become emotionally distant. Yet the truth is far less dramatic. They have simply stopped abandoning themselves in order to remain accepted. They have discovered that inner peace requires boundaries, honesty, and the courage to disappoint people when necessary. This new way of living does not remove pain from life. There are still moments of loneliness, uncertainty, and loss. There are days when the old desire to fit in quietly returns. But now they recognize that temporary loneliness is far less painful than living behind a mask. They understand that every meaningful transformation asks for a price, and that price is often the willingness to leave behind everything that no longer reflects who they are becoming. Eventually, they come to see that disappearing was never the end of their story. It was the moment they stopped living according to expectations written by others and began writing their own. The path may be quieter, and the circle around them may be smaller, but their life finally feels real. What the world called disappearance was, in truth, the beginning of a life built on clarity, purpose, and the quiet strength that comes from no longer needing permission to be yourself. Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't why intelligent people disappear. It's why so few people understand what they're walking away from. Sometimes, stepping back from the noise is the only way to hear your own truth. If you've ever felt different, misunderstood, or called to distance yourself from what no longer feels authentic, remember this. Protecting your inner peace is not selfish. It is the beginning of living honestly. Thank you for spending these moments with me. If this message spoke to your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who may need to hear these words today. Until next time, take care of yourself, and keep seeking the truth within.